Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we're doing a unboxing and review on a discontinued, hard to find Guerlain from the Middle Eastern line, which is called the Les Absolutes d'Orient, and it's called Ombre Éternel. Now I've been wearing this for the last couple days as my scent of the day, and I really enjoyed this scent. I'm just gonna do a fresh spray. I'm actually working off of a decant. So I'm trying to get through this little decant before I crack into the main bottle any further. So I'm just going to sort of remind myself of the opening while we do the unboxing. And then I'll come back and we'll talk about how it develops and all that good stuff. So this unboxing, as I break the decant, this unboxing is actually courtesy of a friend. And it's a friend who runs a business called Sherwood Parfums. And if you've been following the channel, you know that it is a house I've featured on a couple of his fragrance creations, and his name's Prakhar Gupta, and Prakhar Gupta owns Sherwood Parfums, and so I've actually featured a couple. He sent me some decants of a few I've got a chance to speak about, and so one was called Czar, which is sold out, unfortunately. And the other is called Vetiver Royale, I believe, and that's also sold out now. So both of the ones I've done videos on are sold out. But he has a new fragrance creation, and he very kindly sent this to me. So let's open this up and see what it is, because I'm excited to try to get to know this here. So there it is, all the way from India. And I'll tell you what, the thing about Sherwood that really blows me away is the price to quality ratio, especially when we're talking about some of these bigger houses. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. I'm going to go on a little bit of a ramble. But the price to quality ratio, outstanding. If you're someone that's willing to take a chance on a house like this, I'm telling you, you don't find houses, at least to me, it feels like we're sort of getting in on the ground floor with a house like Sherwood. So there's the packaging. Actually really beautiful packaging. The sleeve comes off, and look at that. I think it's a beautiful presentation. This is like, gosh, I don't want to call it, it's smooth. It's almost like if you've ever had Creed's, oh gosh, Royal Mayfair, the inside of the little bit that has that little felt feeling, you know, that's a little bit what the box feels like, but it feels high class. I like it. So let's open it up. So this one is actually very tight box too, tight fit. This one is actually his new one, which is called Gentleman. So I'm actually really excited to get to know Gentleman, because here's the note listing. And so the note listing, there it is right there. You can pause that and check it out. Look at that note listing though. And what most interests me is the leather, the ambergris, the castoreum, these animalic notes in the base, anise, peppers, and, you know, floral hearts and herbs and rosemary and citruses in the top. Very excited to get to know Gentleman. And I think it's already loaded into Parfumo, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see, Sherwood Gentleman. No, it's not. Not yet, but it will be soon, I'm sure. So, so yes, very excited to get to know this one. It's his newest creation, so we'll be hearing more about Gentleman on the channel. There'll be a full review. The guy walking away in the suit on the side, and the bottle fits snugly. Nice packaging. I really like the packaging. This is actually the first Sherwood full bottle that I've held in my hand. So that is one. And then the other one, let me put this back in the little sleeve. And then the other one is this. So same thing, it's got the little sleeve on it. And this one is Czar. And so he set this one aside for me whenever I did my very first review on Czar. I really enjoyed this one. Go check out my review if you want to hear my thoughts. I'm excited to have a full bottle of Czar. Really like this fragrance, and actually really impressed with the quality, like I said, value proposition on this house through the roof. You cannot find fragrances for $60 or $80 that are this quality to me, especially nowadays. I mean, if this was in a Roja bottle or, you know, an MFK bottle or something like that, people would be whipping out their credit card here in the US paying $300, $400, $500 without even thinking about it. But, you know, and that's one of the advantages I think Prakhar has living in India. Well, first of all, he has access to, you know, the natural attars that are distilled right there, right next door to him. I think he's in Mumbai. I can't remember exactly. But the other thing is he doesn't have that overhead that some of the bigger houses have. And I understand they also have economies of scale, but it makes them cheap. And he can splurge in places where they can't. So, you know, he can use the real oud. He can use the real ambergris and all this stuff. We'll talk a little bit about that here as the video goes on. But thank you, Prakhar, for sending those to me. Very, very kind of you. And excited to do a video on Gentleman very soon. So, that's the quick unboxing. So let's talk about today's video of the day. I've got about 40 minutes or so until my next appointment. So today we are going to talk about Ombre Éternel, which is a discontinued Guerlain, okay? And there are numerous, I would say, takes on Ombre Éternel, okay? So you can go look up. There's been a couple of the bigger reviewers that have done reviews on Ombre Éternel. One, Brooklyn Fragrance Lover did one with Steven from Red Essence. And also Mark, the Robe's father, did a very good pop the cherry on Ombre Éternel. So here's the thing about Ombre Éternel. There is a debate going on whether it is amber or whether it's ambergris, okay? And if you actually read the blurb, so here's actually, let me read you the blurb first before we sort of get into it. But it is in the same line as things like Santal Royale, which is the very first from this Les Absolutes d'Orient line, if you will. And it's also in the same line as things like Bois Mystérieux. Okay, so it's a Middle Eastern type fragrance from Guerlain. But here's the little blurb according to the Guerlain website, back when the blurb was still on there, because like I said, it's discontinued now. Parfumos says it's still in production, but it's not. I don't think you can find Ombre Éternel unless you're willing to go drop $400, which is more than double, I think, what the original price was when Ombre Éternel came out. And I must say, it's actually one of my favorites from the Les Absolutes d'Orient line. So I'm actually really sad that it's discontinued. That's why I wanted to do a review on it. So Guerlain's house perfumer, Thierry Wasser, drew inspiration from the treasures of the East to create Ombre Éternel, a powerful sillage that makes the ideal scent for men and women. This is unisex, of course. The main ingredient in this amber accord is ambergris. Okay, now, in the main ingredient in the amber accord is ambergris. So there are some people, when you watch the videos, if you're really interested in getting to know Ombre Éternel, you're going to watch some videos and there are some people that are going to say, there's no amber in here. It's an ambergris accord. Everyone who says it's amber is crazy. And I think they're crazy for saying that, because there's definitely amber in here. You get it right from the get-go. If you know amber fragrances, I mean, name your favorite amber fragrances, you will definitely smell this amber DNA here. And that is a little bit of a, I would say, beef in the online fragrance community, because there are some people that really don't like that modern amber extreme, amber max, whatever you want to call those molecules. And if they smell an amber wood, they're gone, right? And luckily I'm not that person, because I feel like it would really ruin a lot of fragrance compositions that I've came to love, because many fragrances use those type of synthetics nowadays. It's just how they use it. And there are some fragrance houses, like Unique Luxury, for example, that I absolutely annihilated on my live streams because they don't know how to use the amber wood materials. It's just basically, you know, these modern synthetics, not just amber woods, but modern synthetics in general, right? They don't know how to use them. And they basically, you know, are a creation where they'll give you a couple notes in the top, and then it just feels like the last 10 hours is like an droning amberwood dry down. This is not that, okay? This is Thierry Wasser using his experience as in-house perfumer at Guerlain to create something that uses the Guerlainade, which has some softness from the flowers. It has that vanillic tonka Guerlainade base, if you will, but it also does draw inspiration from the Middle East. And so this is one where I really feel like he sort of balanced, he walked the line very well, if you will. And What's interesting about it is Thierry Wasser has gone on record publicly and said that this was his least favorite to create. Not necessarily his least favorite fragrance creation, but his least favorite to create from this line. That he actually much more enjoyed creating Santal Royale, that this is more his baby. And he didn't enjoy this because he felt like there was a lot of pressure on him at the time. He had a short amount of time to create Ombre Éternel, but for me, I would much rather take Ombre Éternel over Santal Royale. I really don't like this. I'm going to review this, but it's not going to be a positive review. Santal Royale for me is probably the worst from the collection. Now, I haven't smelled Musk Noble. I haven't smelled the Oud. There's like a Oud extravagant or something from, I can't remember exactly what it was, but there's an Oud one, there's a Musk one, there's a Patchouli one. I don't think I've smelled any of those. So I haven't smelled everything from the line, but from what I've smelled, Santal Royale is the absolute worst. I really don't like this. And I know there's some people that have kind of come around to it. I'm struggling to come around to Santal Royale, but I definitely didn't take me any time to love Ombre Éternel. From the get-go, I loved the whole setup. So whether Thierry Wasser was under pressure or not, or whatever it was, that's his own thing. But even under pressure, he created an amazing fragrance in my eyes. So the biggest thing is when this fragrance opens up, it opens up with this very chewy, thick, Middle Eastern resinous amber accord, and it's mixed with ambergris. Okay, so the ambergris, let me show you this, because long ago, Russian Adam sent me some. He sent me some sort of ingredients, 50 of them. This is one little, I just put them in this little box along with these Henri Jacques samples that I still haven't gotten to on the channel, but I want to. And one of them happened to be a white ambergris tincture, okay? And so I've had this for about a year now, but I want you to look at the top. And I don't know if you can see the crystals. It's almost like it's crystallized, and it's almost like it's stuck to the top, like it's trying to, look at this. I can't even open it. Did you see the crystals? Look at that. It just popped off the top. That's like an ambergris. Yeah, I'm gonna try to put that back in there. But that's like a, look at how salty and briny and crystallized the ambergris becomes. This is a tincture. And, you know, it is a little bit of an animalic note. I swear, like bits and pieces of like crystallized from the top are like flying off at me whenever I close this. So this is a white ambergris tincture. And Thierry Wasser has been on record claiming that they used real ambergris in this, okay? And so the real ambergris that was used in this is a pretty expensive foray. Many times houses like LVMH, they don't like real ambergris to be used. They don't like real oud. They don't like real ambergris. They don't like real rose. Because those ingredients, number one, they're expensive. They're expensive to recreate. They're expensive to buy more of. And it's almost impossible to make a fragrance that smells exactly the same a year or two or three or four or five in the future, right? So there's a couple fragrances from this line that use real ambergris. And Thierry Wasser, like I said, was on record. He was very adamant about, you know, showing people pictures of the real ambergris hunks that they used and all that stuff. So in my mind, when I think about this being discontinued, the first thing that comes to mind is the ambergris and how expensive it may be to procure more from the coast of New Zealand or wherever they got this from, but also how tough it may be to match it exactly. And Russian Adam talked a little bit about this because, so whenever you have a real ambergris tincture, let's say, even if you use the exact same ambergris, but you use it a year later, because it's sat a year later, it could smell different. That's how tough it is using real ingredients. And that's why many of these fragrance houses love the synthetics. They love some of the things I talked about earlier. Amber Max, Amber Extreme, you know, these sort of different amber wood, modern synthetic type materials, right? These ambery, powerful materials. And there are some fragrances that use those materials that put me off big time. Like I talked about the House of Unique Luxury. I hate the way they do stuff. And I have some more. There'll be some more bashings of Unique Luxury on this channel. To me, this is a proper use of some of those synthetic materials. And so Thierry Wasser had a tough task, right? Because you notice a couple things that he says. So in the little breakdown, he used the word voluptuous, right? It says it's a voluptuous character. Ombre Éternel is a sensual, voluptuous character. And what's interesting about that is because you also notice it being paired with words like delicate. Well, voluptuous implies huge, and they talk about things like powerful and sillage and all this stuff. But on the other side, they're using delicate. And so Guerlain, the old school Guerlains, which are much more sort of geared towards that delicate side, I think, although they had big hits like Shalimar, which were big and bold and stuff like that. But there were many beautiful, delicate Guerlain fragrances from the past that just have this class and sophistication that is unmatched nowadays, in my opinion. And that's why Guerlain's one of my favorite houses from the past. You got to get some of the vintage, old school, you know, the Mitsukos, Val de Nuits of the world, stuff like that. But this line is interesting, okay? Because I think this line tends to maybe bring people to Guerlain. It draws people to Guerlain because some people really begin with those heavy-hitting Middle Eastern-like amber accords. So Thierry Wasser's job was to blend the two, to blend Guerlain's sort of old school, vintage, passed down through the generations knowledge with something modern that would appeal to someone maybe new to the House of Guerlain, or maybe in the Middle Eastern market, or whatever it is, right? And so what you end up smelling when you first spray Ombre Éternel, so when you very first spray it, like I said, you're hit with that chewy amber accord, but it's offset with something that's fresh. And that freshness is tough to pin down. And actually, if you go watch Robes' review, he did a Pop the Cherry video. And basically what he did when he did the Pop the Cherry video is he, at the very end of it, he said that, he basically said that, sorry, let me respond here. He said that he had a very hard time breaking this one down, that it took a little while for him to get to that point, okay? And to get to the point where he felt comfortable talking about it on YouTube. And I 100% agree with what he said. And the reason is because this is a little bit of a strange beast. So when you first spray it, if you have any experience in fragrances whatsoever, you're going to pick up that, you are going to pick up that sort of chewy ambery accord, but it's mixed with some notes that make it a little bit weird and almost makes it like a fresh amber, if you will. And so the notes that end up coming to the forefront, there's spices, obviously, but there's also a couple notes that add this sort of sparkly, bright freshness to the amber accord as well. One, I already mentioned, ambergris. So there's a little bit of that briny, salty, sort of sun sparkling off of the water, ambergris accord. And you can smell it. I mean, it goes beautifully with the amber itself. Amber and ambergris, the debate on fragrances, that are amber versus ambergris is nonstop. Go look at the debate on something like Ombre Nuit, from Dior. And you're going to see multiple people say it's an ambergris. No, it's an amber. No. And there's something very similar going on here, but it's mixed with this coriander. And I think coriander in the top is overdosed, in my opinion. It smells like there's some overdosed coriander because when you smell this, basically what it comes off smelling like is this almost like soapy aldehyde, okay? Almost like a strange soapy aldehyde. And that strange soapy aldehyde, you get that smell whenever you overdose coriander, right? And sometimes it can almost come across as like slightly metallic, right? And so there's this slightly metallic, soapy, almost this fluffy, aldehydic accord that begins to turn floral, okay? And if you go strictly off of the note listing, as it begins to turn floral, you're going to come right into the note is Orange Blossom Absolute. Okay, and I've also talked about Orange Blossom being soapy. I've done this is not a top 10 soapy fragrances. Many Orange Blossom fragrances, neroli fragrances sort of made the cut there as well. But Orange Blossom also adds a little bit of this freshness to the composition, but this is the Absolute. Remember, this is an amber fragrance. Keep that in mind. It's an amber and it's an ambergris. It's both. And so the Absolute is used to add a little bit more heft, if you will. So Orange Blossom Absolute is used here, right? But also, the floral note that really threw me off, and it wasn't until today that it hit me, is there's almost this fluffy iris like accord that is in this fragrance. And that's the key, is it's not just the Orange Blossom Absolute, right? it's also this iris-like feel. And the iris feel reminds me of something like this. If you've ever smelled this, this is Roja's Great Britain. All right. If you've ever smelled Great Britain, there is something that is, so it's almost like this, violet leather. Okay. That's the way that I describe this fragrance. It's also in the same vein as something like Cuir Cannage, right? So that's the way that I would describe this sort of plush, plump, irisy leather fragrance, right? And so if you've smelled Roja's Great Britain, or if you've smelled Cuir Cannage, or even on some of the reviews, there were a lot of people that mentioned things like this. So if you've ever smelled Dior Homme, right? Probably one of the greatest designers ever. This is the vintage silver stem, but even the newer stuff Demachi did were still good. That iris, cacao, just brilliant composition. I absolutely love Dior Homme. I think it's one of the greatest designer fragrances for men ever created. And it has a little bit of a feminine tilt to it. There were some people that didn't like that feminine lipsticky iris vibe, right? And so if you're, you know, one of those people who like that feeling, which I do, Robes compared it to maybe like the inside of a purse. How there's a little bit of suede on the inside of the purse, but there's also maybe some makeup and stuff like that. And I agree with that. But there is this iris vibe that reminds me not as much of Dior Homme, more of the way it was done in Cuir Cannage and Roja's Great Britain because of that leathery-like accord. So if you've ever smelled those fragrances, that is sort of the missing link that gets you in the ballpark to me. And that's the part that really takes it from, in my mind, something that was a little bit of a mystery. You know, like there was a question mark on Ombre Éternel. I know I loved it. And if you take a look at the bottle, it's almost like a slight purple color, just a little bit of like this, you know, deep, dark purple, right? And I think this is the perfect color. Absolute perfect color. To me, it is because iris and violet have a little bit of that purpliness, but it's not just the iris and violet. It's also mixed with the spices. So there's cardamom in here. I mentioned the coriander, which is a spice. You know, it's related to cilantro in a sense. But also there is that soapy sort of metallic bit. What did I say? Soapy aldehydic bit in here in the top, mixed with that chewy Middle Eastern style ambery accord that Thierry Wasser absolutely nailed. I mean, even if he was, you know, working long hours and had pressure to create this, he knocked this out of the park for me. That amber in the base, and there is an amber note listed in the base. There's also wood. They say woody notes and leathery notes is what they say. And those two notes begin to come out more and more into the dry down. And it's not just wood to me. It's also the other thing that tends to come forward is incense. So as the fragrance continues to dry down, it turns into this Middle Eastern incensey, slightly smoky, with this very plush, very, you know, I mentioned earlier about how the older Guerlains had this sort of sophistication to them. This, you know, this sort of bourgeois, high-class sophistication. And, of course, Guerlain is like what Creed wishes they were. It really is passed down from generation to generation. And you think about all the old Guerlain perfumers, right? And Thierry Wasser managed to mix that into an otherwise harsh composition. And when you get all of that blending together, it creates a beautiful fragrance. And it's really sad this one's discontinued because I think this is one of the best from the line. I wish more people got to experience this. But it takes people some time, I think, because even for someone like me who smelled thousands of fragrances, when I smelled this, I'm like, ooh, I like it, but what is it? Like there's something about this that it's almost like, there's layers to peel back. It's tough to sort of put your finger on exactly what you're smelling. There's, ingredients which smell high quality, like the ambergris, but there's also those synthetic modern, Middle Eastern style ambers in here as well. That's thick and heavy. And so it's like this, you know, bringing two worlds together. Fine French perfumery and that Middle Eastern style Les Absolutes d'Orient collection, right? And so very, very interesting composition to me. Now, one beef that I have, and I was thinking about this because Rich Mitch and me and Jonathan are in like a group chat, and we were talking a little bit about sort of Guerlain and not just Guerlain, but LVMH and L'Oreal and, Puig and all of these big sort of houses that own many fragrance houses, and they really go for the absolute bottom dollar, right? And I'll just share something. I will just share something very interesting that I've been reading, and this is going to come across as just something that's been sort of floating around in my mind, and I'll try to tie it all together, right? But this is a book that I'm reading about Andrew Jackson, right? From he was president in the early 1800s, right? And so this was, I think, 1824 or so. They were talking about a quote that he had to fight the people's battle, all right? This is Democracy 101. So he says that his idea is that he was committed to the idea that if left to their own devices, the elite would serve their own interests at the expense of the many. Just a very small quote into the mind of Andrew Jackson, right? And I know I highlighted the damn thing because it stuck out to me, and I am apt to highlight and go back from time to time. But it really does feel like we're in this vicious cycle right now where the elite are taking advantage of the many in more ways, and this is just one very, very small example, extremely small example. But we need another Andrew Jackson, I'll tell you that right now. We need a champion of the people, I would say. And this is what really bothers me. So this right here is supposed to be Guerlain's interpretation of the bee bottle. Okay, so if you've ever seen the bee bottle, this is a small example of one, but they have much more beautiful decorative, ornate. If you ever see like the 1,000 ml giant bee bottles, this is supposed to be like a miniature version of that. But this is a good example of sort of what the bee bottle looks like. This is Mouchior de Monsieur, which they also sort of discontinued. It has the bees all over it. So they took all the bees off because, of course, that costs money to do. And so they made it flat, and this is supposed to be like a Middle Eastern interpretation of the bee bottle. Well, every single one goes in the exact same bottle. So they have the mold. And we were talking about this with Rich Mitch and I and Jonathan, and we were just sort of lamenting the fact that even modern, so like I said, this is for Cannage, all the privés go in this exact same bottle, right? This is Amouage, all the Amouage bottles for men kind of come in this bottle. Well, now they took away the men and women, but you get the idea. This bottle is like the mold, if you will. You could just go right down the list and say that about so many big luxury fragrance houses. Think of things like Tom Ford. Tom Ford's bottles are sort of stock bottles with a damn sticker on it. They all have the same cap and all that stuff. And we were just sort of lamenting the fact that these big houses are, sort of taking advantage of trying to squeeze every last penny. You know what I mean? Like, let's say that someone did an analysis of this and decided that this was a good perfume Thierry Wasser created. And I would make the argument that anyone who really likes perfume, when they smelled the line, Oud Essentiel I've never smelled, like I said, or Must Noble I've never smelled. But many of the others that I've smelled, when I compare it to this is a damn good fragrance. And so for them to make the decision, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I'm guessing based on the fact that, their god is like money. Money is their god. That's all they care about. They don't really care about, in my opinion, it feels like they don't care about the artistic side of perfume anymore, right? And so they're trying to squeeze every single cent out of this that they can. And if taking out a fragrance, even if it's good, is going to save them money, they'll do it, right? And who knows how this was selling, but I did have some people say that that I spoke with that said, hey, I worked in retail at the time in the Middle East, and this was selling like hotcakes over there, and on and on and on. And so it's just sort of depressing and sad to see what is supposed to be a luxury good. This is supposed to be a luxury good perfume, right? And when you're trying to squeeze and you're already one of the biggest corporations in the world, basically. You are what LVMH is. I think the guy that owned LVMH is one of the top 3 richest guys in the world. It keeps going back and forth with him and Musk, and I don't know if Buffett or Gates are up there still, or if someone else has sort of stepped in, but you know, you're basically one of the largest corporations, and you're trying to cut a fragrance because an ambergris chunk costs 30 grand. I mean, to me, it's almost like you're shooting yourself in the foot, because people who love perfume are going to realize that, and instead of paying $400 for a bottle of this in the aftermarket on eBay, which is what it costs, they're going to go and they're going to buy something from the house of Papillon, or they're going to buy something from some of these other smaller sort of artisanal houses, if you will. Sherwood, right? And what did I say? 60 bucks for one of these? And you're getting something comparable, if not arguably better, because of the material used, than many of the stuff that's coming out from L'Oreal and Puig and LVMH and on and on and on, right? That's my sort of rant, if you will. That's my I was thinking about that as I was getting ready to do this video. And again, this is a positive review. I love Ombre Éternel. It's one of my all-time favorites from this collection, along with Bois Mysterio, which is the old Sange du Bois de Et, which I have a bottle of the vintage Sange du Bois de Et, and Bois Mysterio is a very good, you know, reformulation, if it was reformulated at all. I don't know. But when you go from 75 mils to 125 mils and you keep the price the same or whatever it was, it certainly makes me think that maybe there was some sort of a reformulation, but I have no clue. I don't know if that's true or not. All I know is that I think that this is one of the stronger Les Absolutes d'Orient collection, and they nixed it, and that kind of pisses me off. You know, discontinuations and reformulations are just a fact of life in the fragrance world. And in fact, I love discontinued fragrances. Having a discontinued fragrance is like having something that is special, because you have something that is very hard to get. There's a collector aspect to this hobby as well. It's not just wearing the fragrance. Obviously, I love wearing the fragrance as well, but there is a collector aspect to this hobby as well. And so collecting hard to find rare discontinued fragrances can become fun. You're trying to hunt down something and that sort of thing. But irregardless of that, as a perfume lover, I would love for more and more people to be able to get to know stuff like this. And what's sad about sort of the perfume world in the state that we're in right now, let's say there's 2,000 releases that came out in 2016 when this came out. That may be true. There may be 2,000 releases. How do you try every single one? How do you keep up? How do you find that needle in a haystack that's one or two or a couple good ones? Or, you know, unfortunately, one of the only ways is to either do your due diligence, go to the perfume shop and sniff yourself and see whether you like what Thierry Wasser built here, you know, with this sort of fluffy, irisy, ambergris fragrance, Middle Eastern style accord with that leathery dry down. And if I didn't say it, by the way, the leather does get stronger into the dry down. I've got about a 5-hour dry down here, and like I said, I just sprayed before the video here half an hour ago, and the leather definitely gets stronger as time goes on. So if you're a fan of leathers like I am, ambery, leathery fragrances, definitely one to check out. And so, but it's just, I just wish that, you know, there was more integrity in the perfume. It feels like it's turning into a dirtier and dirtier and dirtier game, where they're just sort of recycling formulas, trying to take advantage of people. They are, you know, discontinuing things putting stuff out and discontinuing things at an unbelievable rate. And that's why I think many people give up on it. It's impossible to smell everything. You have to sort of know what you like, go with what you like, or trust someone that, you know, has a nose where, and they're being honest with you, right? That's the other side of the coin. You have to trust some people. If you're using this YouTube, you know, this sort of mechanism as a way of sampling new things based on people who do videos that, let's say, you trust, or this, that, or the other. But I just wish that there was more love of perfume itself, because for me, I always sort of took the Coty method at heart. You know, make a fantastic fragrance, put it in a good bottle, and watch your company grow, kind of thing. But making the good fragrance and loving the fragrance has to be the first thing. And many of these houses now, they've lost that. When all you care about is money, you're going to make decisions like discontinue something that was amazing to save a penny. and you're hurting yourself in the long run, because since then they've came out with how many fragrances from this collection? They came out with a spice one last year. I didn't even bother smelling. They've completely lost my this whole trying to build like you try to build this anticipation and hype and get somebody anxious and excited to try something. It's gone with these new houses. It's completely gone. When Louis Vuitton or Guerlain or Dior comes out with a new fragrance, now I just go, I don't even care, because, I have what I like, I know what I like, and I just sort of try and stick to my lanes. And so many times when I try the new stuff, I'm let down. So many times I'm let down. It's very rare that I find newer fragrance creation that I really, really like. And this happens to be one of them, and it's discontinued. So figured I would do the video, talk about it, do the unboxing, have a little bit of a ramble. If you've had experience with Ombre Éternel, let me know what you think of the comparison to, I ate before this video, that was a bad idea. Let me know what you think of the comparison to Great Britain, the Cuir Cannage, sort of Irisy, Dior Homme comparison, if you will. It's one that if you like that style, I definitely think it's one to try and hunt down. Unfortunately, it is tough to find, but like I said, with that suede-y, leathery sort of dry down in the Middle Eastern style, I really think that Thierry Wasser created something special here. Shame that this is his least favorite one, and it could just have been the time in his life, the pressure he was under, all of that stuff. I could totally see that being a part of it, but I think Ombre Éternel is a special fragrance that deserves more love and talk in the community. And again, I know it's hard to come by, but if you get a chance to sniff it or sample it based on the video I did or whatever, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Come back, let me know what you think. So that's my review of Ombre Éternel, and a little bit of a ramble on things like pricing and bottles and discontinuations, and of course the value for money on houses like Sherwood. So keep an eye out for the Gentleman review from Sherwood as well. Cheers, guys. Appreciate everyone watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.